They say every small town has a place nobody talks about, but in the quiet town of Blackwood, there was a house that everyone feared, the house behind the haunted harvest. Every October, when the pumpkin fields were covered in fog and the town prepared for its annual Haunted Harvest Festival, an abandoned wooden house stood beyond the last row of pumpkins, hidden beneath twisted trees. No one had lived there for decades, yet every Halloween night, a single light appeared in its upstairs window. The older villagers called it the Crowe House and warned children never to go near it because, according to an old legend, anyone who entered after midnight would never return. Years earlier, the house belonged to a farmer named Elias Crowe, his wife Martha, and their 8-year-old daughter Emily. Elias was a hardworking farmer, but one autumn he began noticing strange things happening in his fields. Pumpkins disappeared overnight, footprints appeared in the soil, and every morning a new pumpkin was found carved with a face that looked disturbingly human. Then one cold October evening, Elias heard Emily calling him from the pumpkin field. He ran outside and found her standing completely still beneath the moonlight, staring toward the dark forest. When Elias asked what she was doing, Emily whispered, "The people in the field want to come home." Elias looked around but saw nobody. He carried Emily back inside and locked every door. But shortly after midnight, someone knocked 3 times on the front door. Elias looked through the window and saw a man standing outside who looked exactly like him. The stranger smiled and whispered, "Let us in." Elias stepped away from the window, but when he turned around, Emily was gone. He searched every room until he heard her crying from the basement. When he opened the basement door, he discovered hundreds of old pumpkins stacked against the walls, each one carved with the face of someone who had disappeared in Blackwood over the years. In the center of the room stood Emily, surrounded by black roots crawling across the floor. A voice came from the darkness beneath the house, promising Elias that his family would never die if he gave it one thing: the harvest. Elias refused, grabbed Emily, and tried to escape, but the house seemed to change around them. Doors disappeared, hallways became endless, and whispers filled the walls. Elias eventually managed to get Emily outside and set the pumpkin fields on fire, believing the flames would destroy whatever lived beneath the soil. But before the fire reached the house, a massive shadow rose from the ground and swallowed Elias and Emily. By morning, the house was empty. Elias and his family were gone, and the villagers found only Emily's red ribbon hanging from a dead tree. From that day forward, the Crowe House became forbidden. The Haunted Harvest Festival was created years later, supposedly as a harmless Halloween celebration. But the oldest villagers secretly knew the truth. The festival kept everyone away from the house while the harvest moon kept the creature beneath the fields asleep. For decades, nothing happened, until one Halloween night, a 17-year-old boy named Daniel decided to investigate the legend. His friends dared him to enter the Crowe House and livestream the experience. So carrying only his phone and a flashlight, Daniel crossed the pumpkin field just before midnight. The moment he reached the front door, it slowly opened by itself. Inside, the house was freezing cold, and the walls were covered with old photographs of the Crowe family. Daniel noticed something strange in every photograph. A dark figure stood somewhere behind the family, and in each newer photograph, the figure appeared closer. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. Daniel tried to open it, but the handle would not move. Then he heard a little girl laughing upstairs. He followed the sound and entered Emily's old bedroom, where an ancient music box was playing by itself. On the bed sat a small doll wearing a faded red ribbon. Daniel picked it up, and the music immediately stopped. A whisper came from behind him. "You finally came back." Daniel turned slowly and saw Emily standing in the doorway. Her face was pale, her eyes were completely black, and dirt covered her old white dress. She pointed toward the basement and whispered, "He is awake." Suddenly, the entire house began shaking. Black roots burst through the floorboards and hundreds of whispers filled the rooms. Daniel ran downstairs and discovered the truth. The creature beneath the house was still alive, feeding on the fear of the town and using the spirits of the dead to lure new victims into its home. Daniel found an old journal belonging to Elias, which revealed that the creature could only be destroyed by burning Emily's red ribbon, the last object that connected her spirit to the house. Daniel grabbed the ribbon from the doll and ran toward the fireplace. But Emily appeared behind him and screamed, "Don't!" Daniel hesitated, But then he remembered the missing villagers and threw the ribbon into the flames. The house exploded with a terrifying scream. The walls cracked, the windows shattered, and the black roots began burning. Daniel escaped through a broken window just as the Crowe House collapsed into the ground. When morning came, the haunted harvest festival was silent. The villagers gathered around the ruins, believing the curse had finally ended. Daniel returned home exhausted and tried to forget everything that had happened. But when he checked his phone, he discovered that his live stream had recorded something he never saw. In the final seconds of the video, Daniel was running through the burning house. But behind him stood Emily and dozens of missing villagers, all staring directly into the camera. Then Emily slowly raised her hand and pointed toward the screen. A voice whispered, "You destroyed our home, but you didn't destroy us." Daniel immediately dropped the phone. That night, 3 slow knocks came from his bedroom window. He was too terrified to look, but eventually he pulled the curtain aside. Across the dark pumpkin field stood the Crowe House, completely rebuilt, its windows glowing with yellow light. In the upstairs window stood Emily, still wearing the red ribbon. She smiled at Daniel and whispered words he would never forget. "The haunted harvest begins again." And from that night onward, every Halloween, the people of Blackwood would see a new light appear in the upstairs window of the house behind the harvest. And if anyone looked closely enough, they could see a new face standing beside Emily, waiting for the next person brave enough to enter.